Stats DB. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for Sporting News. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, good morning, Vinny.
I got to ask you, Vinnie, is it funny, ironic, or something else that the minute Deshaun Watson leaves the building, the Browns become a functional football team?
Yeah, I think it's surprising. I'll say that. And I just look at the Browns, and all of a sudden they seem to respond better all around. I mean, the body language is bad. I mean, the Amari Cooper situation to the point where he wasn't interested in being there, and I don't know what it was, but now I think you have a better understanding is that Deshaun Watson was dragging down some of the things that were going on with his team, and they were reluctant to make this change without the injury. And all of a sudden, there was a completely different Browns team. They just seemed to be playing more inspired. They were all ready to make plays. They saw their rival on the field, and they were just ready for that game. But you hadn't seen it in several weeks, and they were also energized. And Jameis Winston keep doing these speeches that get them fired up. So I don't know. Deshaun Watson was just maybe not leading the way that he needed to, on top of not playing well.
How every time I see a Jameis Winston speech, I just wonder, how does anyone take that man seriously?
He's like a character of himself, but it's almost like they know that that's just Jameis, Vinny. That
they respond to it.
That must play.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like the redemption that you're seeing with Baker Mayfield and all these guys that were the number one picks, is they were humbled a bit, right? I mean, Jameis Winston has definitely been a lot more humble than some of these other guys, where he was the guy for a while with the Tampa Buccaneers, but then it was just here's Tom Brady winning a championship, here's Baker coming in, then he's trying to find his way with the Saints, couldn't quite handle the Drew Brees transition there, even though he played well for a little while. So, man, when these guys get humbled and they're trying to show their teammates, look, we have something left here to keep playing and being inspired, I think people respect that a little bit more sometimes than just the guy that has everything, with Deshaun Watson getting all the money guaranteed, not playing anything up to that level.
He's racking up touchdowns in a hurry the last 3 weeks. He hasn't turned the ball over either. Should Jalen Hurts be getting the flowers considering all the criticism that he received? He's playing at a high level these last handful of weeks, winning 3 in a row.
Yeah, I think the thing with Jalen Hurts is it's going to take time with any offensive system to completely get immersed in it. And there was a bit of a hiccup there. I mean, not having A.J. Brown for a few games, not having A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith for one game. Now they've had to readjust without Dallas Goedert for some time. But I think the Eagles just are trying to figure out what type of team they are in terms of their offense. And I think they finally got it, where they want to be malleable to whoever their opponent is. Like if they're trying to take away the run and stick on Barkley, you can open up the passing game and you can run with Jalen Hurts. If they're kind of protecting against the deep ball with Devonta and AJ, then you're like, okay, we'll just run it down your throat here with the kind of a softer front. So I think the Eagles are doing a better job of adapting and adjusting than they did last year, and a lot of that credit goes to Kellen Moore. And again, you're seeing that happen. If you go back to any of the numbers, I know the Chargers were a little bit of an outlier, but you go to the Cowboys with Kellen Moore. I mean, this is the type of offense they ran. It was pretty dangerous, and they could do a lot of things with multiple guys, and that's what you're seeing finally kind of coming together, and that's why they made the change to Moore for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because two of the guys you mentioned, A.J. Brown and Smith, they had the highest catch rate over expected catch outcome in the NFL. So not only is the offense coming along, they're making plays for their quarterback, too. Some of the stuff they come down with is incredible.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't need to be perfect. You just need to get the ball somewhere there. And we've seen that for Russell Wilson for sure, right? He's not perfect, but he's getting the ball somewhere in the vicinity of George Pickens, wherever's getting downfield, to make those plays. And that's sometimes what you have to do as a quarterback. And, we look at quarterbacks who are cutting down on interceptions. I'll give you a good example. It's like we look at Derek Carr, and sometimes he plays well. But sometimes we don't look at the plays where they could have been made, right? If they took a shot, threw the ball downfield, someone that's the thing we'll never see. And that's a stat that is really hard to keep, right? Because you can't see everything that's going on downfield. But it's kind of a thing that you look at is the missed throws. It's kind of like when we're watching a batter and there's a fastball down the middle, you kind of track if they foul it off or just miss it or ground out or pop up versus when they hit a home run. So I think that's kind of the hidden part of the game is like sometimes you need to be aggressive and trust your receivers even if they're covered.
Vinny, how much credit do you have to give Mike Tomlin, who's sitting there at 4-2 with Justin Fields as a starter and doesn't bat an eye, to be like, yeah, no,
these are my guys, Vinny. I love the question.
We're going with Russ. I don't care what any of you people say.
Yeah, I mean, he knows his team better than anyone else, and I think you have to just give him credit. I mean, this guy just keeps winning no matter what. I mean, I think after last year, when you had Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, and this team was still a playoff team, you said those are your three quarterbacks, and they had these types of numbers, and you said this team made the playoffs, like you think this is crazy, right? But this year, I think he played it perfectly. I think you look at Justin Fields, he did what they needed to do early when they had certain matchups, and their defense was playing well. But their defense was having a few issues last night, right? They were
couldn't stop the run out of those spread sets.
Yeah, so their defense was not perfect, but the way you get them into what they do best, rush the passer, what do? You put pressure on the team that you're playing by scoring points and being able to stretch the field. And the funny thing is, I think they also noticed that they were not great in the red zone. They're still not great in the red zone. They're just not a red zone team when you have, I think Pat Frymouth is actually better down the seam receiver, and you also have Pickens, who's definitely a big play receiver, right? You don't have that guy that's just going to get open in the red zone, and they have trouble running it in the red zone for some reason. So that's still going to be an issue, but if you're scoring some long touchdowns to offset that, that's going to help you. And Fields just was not capable of producing those long touchdowns that Wilson gets.
Hey, going forward, and you may want to project this into 2025, but if you're the general manager, would you rather be the Bengals or the Cowboys?
Well, I think the Bengals are actually in better shape. If you look at the bigger picture. Well, the Cowboys, I mean, they backed themselves in the corner. They're going to have to pay a lot to Micah Parsons now. Now he's hurt. And they're just locked into some of these contracts. So they don't have a lot of freedom and flexibility where I think the Bengals realize that some of these contracts are getting too rich here. I think I would expect them to move on from T. Higgins, this guy again. On top of everything else, he's critical to what they do, but he can't stay on the field very often. I mean, these injuries just pop up in the middle of the week, and then he's not on the field. So I think they can move on. They still have their franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. They paid him. They'll pay Jamar Chase. They'll be more calculated who else they pay on that team. But I think the Bengals are just in better shape because they have Burrow. And right now, I mean, you trust a little bit about what's around Burrow than you trust what's around Dak Prescott. And when I say that, it's not just CeeDee Lamb. It's the offensive line, it's the running game, all that. I think right now the Bengals are well positioned to kind of reboot, make that transition. That's what you really have to do, honestly. Like, the Chiefs are able to do it at a high level once they paid Patrick Mahomes. You're seeing the Bills figuring that out, right? Once they paid Josh Allen, it took them a little bit of time to do that and figure out what kind of team you want. So it's going to happen. But the Cowboys, I think, just with Jerry Jones, they just are trying to please everybody with the money, and sometimes it's going to really strap you in a lot of places.
Maybe I'm just I see what I want to see, but Vinny, I'm outside of my buddy Ryan, who's the only Cardinals fan I know in the area. In the offseason, I talked about he should have been comeback player of the year last year, and I get the whole Flacco phenom. He won one more game, whatever. But I was big on Kyler Murray's resurgence this year. He's off to a great start. They're 4-4. It's a little ugly and clunky at times, but should he get a little more praise for the criticism that he took early in his career? He's playing at a pretty high level.
Yeah, what's happening with Kyler Murray is the fact that you have Lamar Jackson playing well, you have Jalen Hurts playing well, you've got Jaden Daniels coming in, and the Cliff Kingsbury offense. And he could get overshadowed quickly with that style of quarterback. and Josh Allen hasn't thrown over an interception, right? Those running quarterbacks who can throw downfield. And Kyler Murray's got as much talent as any of them, right? But I think what you're just seeing is it's hard to figure out what team is really got the best quarterback right now overall. Patrick Mahomes is the guy that's got the rings, but if you looked at right now, the way he's playing, it's not at the highest level. And Joe Burrow's in a bad team, but he's playing as well as he can. And then you have these guys that are dual threats that are being awesome. So Kyler Murray, I think, would be getting more attention if you didn't just have all this buzz about some other quarterbacks here. But I'm excited because, again, the Cardinals, they have a shot to maybe if they get their defense better, that they're going to be in contention. Yeah, that's going to be the thing. Can they shore up the run defense at some point, stop the big plays by other quarterbacks? I don't think there's any problem with their offense to try to win games, but their defense is what worries me maybe the second half of the season more as they try to stay in first place in the West.
So now is it probably more imminent that they try to hang on to Budda Baker?
Yeah, it's very funny because we saw these teams that were kind of about to be sellers, the Rams, the Cardinals, these teams, like everyone's like, oh, trade your entire team. Get rid of them. They're not good. I mean, really the only teams that qualify under that, the Panthers don't have a lot of guys that have value for others, especially with Deontay Johnson and Abdeel hurt. And that's the Titans. They already made that move with DeAndre Hopkins. But there's not a lot of sellers. And I think we want to desperately try to turn the NFL trade deadline to the MLB trade deadline, right? This team is bad. They're out of contention. This guy's going to be a free agent. Trade him down the stretch. It's never going to be that way, right? These players that were traded, I mean, they're more anomalous, like with Adams and Cooper. They're just guys that I think,
Kansas City bolstering their linebacking core yesterday, right?
Yeah,
it's like
that's a simple trade that you can move, right? I mean, Josh Uche is a plug-and-play guy. He's a rotational guy. Those are the type of guys you pick up, and really that's how they approach baseball too, right? You get some bench guys, an extra arm, somebody to be a fielder when you need it in a clutch situation for the playoffs. So that's how you kind of approach it. But we're like, hey, trade this guy, Cooper Kupp going across and going to, we all fall into it. People care about it. I get it once the rumors start to swirl. But in the end, I just don't think it's that buyer seller so simple, right? I mean, the Rams give up Cooper Kupp. That's just giving up Cooper Kupp, period, right? You're not going to get it back where a lot of these cases with the MLB that they're a free agent and a lot of these teams can sign them back if they really wanted them and they're kind of borrowing them. So it's very interesting that there's so much interest about the trade deadline, but the Adams Cooper things to me are outliers. I think they were just not happy at all in their situations and they wanted out and the teams were obliged.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. Vinnie, I wanted to kind of return to something you had said about Deshaun and how the entire Browns organization was kind of being like sucked into this negativity surrounding Deshaun and being pulled down by him. Could I make the argument the same thing's happening with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers?
Well, that division stinks, though. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, I think, I don't know if you can say, I mean, we'll take Russell Wilson and Broncos out of it because I think the Broncos just weren't ever the right fit for him, and now we see that the Steelers are. But when you look at that, you can't invest too much in a quarterback that's going to try to dictate the action or you're locking it too much to him, and catering too much to him. So that's what's happened to the Jets. They've catered to Aaron Rodgers way too much. I mean, I blame the owner a bit, Woody Johnson, trying to do this right. You're picking the quarterback over the coach, and the coach is doing his best. I mean, you see what's happening of late. Their defense is falling apart. I mean, Robert Saleh was important to keeping that defense. I know they have the coordinator taking over, but it's harder when that coordinator also has to manage all the parts of the team, right? That's probably unfair to Jeff Ulbrich, where he was trying to prepare his team week in and week out. Saleh had more of the organizational stuff. So I don't know, and not knowing what trades were going on or what moves were going on and having a disconnect between everyone in the front office and the coaching staff. It's really disappointing because I think they had so much promise, but yeah, they got a little bit manipulated by Aaron Rodgers pretty badly, and the owner is there to blame. Where I think the GM Joe Douglas is very good. I feel like if something happens, they get rid of him too, he's going to land somewhere and that really make the team happy.
Vinny, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because you said something that kind of made my ears perk up about catering to a quarterback. Off the top of your head, can you ever remember that working?
No, it's tough to make that work. I mean, you also don't want to go the complete other way.
Sure.
The Broncos were anti-Russell Wilson the whole time and didn't really do anything to help him. So, like, it does happen quite a bit in this league. I think teams are so desperate to win. I think what's happened to the Jets is they've failed so miserably, right, with their quarterback decisions that they try to do this. Well, sometimes you have to take the 49ers approach. Okay, you didn't have Trey Lance at work. Garoppolo, just draft guys, and you don't know if you'll find a Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson. Just draft guys that have some potential, and you might have a shot here. But, yeah, I mean, I think they've been too all in on some quarterbacks here. They probably were again hasty. You saw with Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. Several years removed from the Jets, look what they're doing right now. So maybe it's an organizational thing where they were just like, oh, we can't get quarterback to work, so let's just get Aaron Rodgers in the end of his career and try to make it happen. And I think the Jets, again, they have to go back to the drawing board and probably draft a quarterback, but they can't let this Aaron Rodgers thing continue beyond this year.
Vinny, I'll get you out of in this. I get that, in the AFC, it's easy to ride on the Chiefs' shoulders, right? They have the best player and a ton of success. But, gosh, I seriously would make the case that the two worst divisions belong in the American Football Conference. Is the AFC as top-heavy as some would have you to believe, or do you like more of the balance in the National Football Conference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you look at the AFC, and the one thing that is happening, and there's definitely a lot of that going on, where I think the Souths are still pretty bad in both conferences.
Yeah.
So if you cross over and play the South, or whoever's playing the Souths in any form, are going to be a bit inflated, and that's how you start. But when you look at the AFC, yeah, it's pretty weak when you look at Denver and Los Angeles having a shot to make the playoffs. I mean,
hey, Denver's 5-3. I'm like,
yeah,
really?
But you look at this. If you start diving into the schedule, we're like, oh, they're playing the NFC South, right?
Yep.
And there's 3 wins that are sitting on the table now at this point, right? The state of the Buccaneers.
They beat the Saints, the Panthers, and the Raiders, and the Jets.
Yeah,
those are 4 of Denver's wins.
Yeah, so that's what's happening, right? I mean, there are some bad teams, and these schedules have aligned for some of these teams. Like, I'm not taking anything away from the Commanders either, but a lot of things have aligned for the Commanders, right?
And they get the Steelers next.
Yeah, so, I mean, that'll be a great game, I mean, for sure, after the Steelers bye. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, these teams do have back-heavy schedules, whatever, but that's what you'll see in the second half. Like, you'll see which teams really belong. And I think the other thing that happened with the Jets is sometimes you don't want too high profile. Like, they need to be a little bit under the radar. Because what happens in the NFL, I think this is one of the most underrated things in the NFL that people don't see, is the fact that the marquee teams, they try to put them front-loaded with a lot of tough games. And it's hard to dig out of that. So I think the Cowboys fall into that. They still have a tough schedule ahead. It's brutal to look at it. But I think some things just align in the schedule that you don't expect for teams where their opponents just become really bad, or injuries just kind of wipe out an opponent that seemed to be good, right? And then you run into teams like the Cowboys that are just facing a brutal schedule. So I don't know. Like, I think if you look at it, I mean, the Jets' schedule on the back end is pretty favorable, but the damage has already been done. When they've played this gauntlet of teams early, it's hard to recover from that.
That's Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. Vinny, we appreciate the time as always. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right, thank you. Thank you, guys.